Alright guys, today we're going to be talking about the new Clover Academy Rill, and this guy is a genuinely very good support. Out of the two units that came out for Season 8 on Global, I would say Rill is probably the more important unit. I do think he's better than Noelle personally, so if you are going to pull, I do recommend pulling for him. Now in general, I don't necessarily think either of these characters are necessary to pull on because plenty of the meta teams right now on Global work just fine without them, but later on Rill will become better as more units release, like the new Gray who's going to be coming out when the new Noelle comes out and stuff like that. He will be pretty good for those teams, so if you want to plan ahead and potentially get him, you could get him for that reason. But with that said, today we're going to be talking about his build guide, what skills you want to upgrade first on him, what skill pages you want to equip on him, what gear you want to run on him, whether or not he's actually worth pulling on to enhance and get extra dupes of, what talents you want to run on him, and then of course what teams is he going to fit well on. So starting with his skills, let's start with his unique LR passive. At the start of the battle, if all allies have the power attribute, grants self speed plus 5. So that right there means you are probably going to be using this character on a mono red team for the most part, and he already has pretty good speed at 120, plus you can increase that speed with the talent tree and with your gear, and then getting an additional plus 5 speed right here. He will be one of the fastest characters in the game. He is very good for mono red in that respect. Then his skill 1 is called Color Ball, grants a defender ally a 15% increased mobility buff. So that increased mobility is nice, and then you get an additional plus 5% mobility if you upgrade the skill to level 5. So that is a 20% increase in mobility for a defender mage ally, who would probably be Black Asta, giving him more turns and more chances to do damage and increase the defense of your team and whatnot. So that's pretty good. His skill 2 is called Composition Adjustment, grants all allies a 14% reduced damage taken buff for 2 turns. Now it's not normally that high unless you have it upgraded. Mine is up to level 3. I do need to get it to level 5. This is a skill that is worth upgrading because it increases the amount of damage reduction you get, and that's very good. Then if you have his skill page equipped, you get this additional effect. Without the skill page equipped, you won't have it, but it grants all allies an increased speed level 1 buff for 1 turn. That is an increase in your speed by 35%, which is very good. That right there is going to make his skill page the best skill page you can equip on him. So if you're able to, I highly recommend getting his skill page either from the battle pass or from the shop where you exchange SSR mage pieces, or if you're lucky enough to pull it. But I highly recommend getting his skill page if you are thinking about running this Rill because of that singular effect right there, which is very good. And then his special skill is called Surging Inspiration, grants an ally a 70% increase mobility buff, and as you upgrade it, it becomes 100%. So what this does, it's insanely good. So if an ally is already at 100% mobility, meaning their mobility gauge is full and they're about to have a turn, this will essentially give them almost 2 turns in a row, which is just absolutely crazy. Having a 100% increase in mobility for an ally is very broken, like more than you guys know. So that special skill is absolutely insane. You are definitely going to want to upgrade that if you have the ability to. And then last but not least, we have his combined attack, which grants the partner mage a 5% increased mobility buff. You can run this Rill with a potential slew of characters, right? And if you're running him with like Black Asta, you could give Black Asta increased mobility, and that could be useful given this, you know, whatever scenario you're looking at. But as you upgrade the skill, it will increase the amount of mobility you give up to 25%, which isn't the craziest, but it's decent, right? So in terms of upgrade priority, I would probably recommend going for either skill 2 or your special skill first. Just depends on which one you think is more important. I think the skill 2 you're going to have up more often, so I'd probably go for skill 2 first, and then I would go for the special skill. Then I would honestly probably go for skill 1 if you're getting it all the way to level 5, because 20% increased mobility every turn is insane. And then last but not least, I would go for the combined skill, because you're probably not going to be using the combined skill as much as you're aiming to use the special skill. So upgrade priority, skill 2, special skill, skill 1, combo skill, in my opinion. Let me know if you guys think differently down in the comments. And now let's talk about skill pages that you can equip. So as I already said, because of this additional effect right here, you're going to want his skill page. It's really good. But then besides that, the passive skill. Upon attacking an attacker, there is a 20% chance to grant self an SP plus 1. As you upgrade this, right, you can get an extra SP and you can increase your chance of activating it. An SP plus 2 buff at 100% of the time can be really good. And then in that case, if you are going to have a duped out skill page, then I might change my order and I'd say upgrade the special skill first, then skill 2, then skill 1, then combined attack. It just depends on what you're going for. But overall, his skill page is the absolute best that you can run on him. I highly recommend it. But if you don't have it or you weren't lucky enough to pull it, there are some other options. So one of those other options would be like Moonlight Necklace. I have gone over this in many build guides, but it's just a really good general pool skill page that a lot of people are going to have. And what it's going to do is it's going to give you 40 to 80% increased defense and 6 to 10% increased healing to yourself, which is just going to help Rill survive longer so that he can do his support abilities and actually be useful for the team. Another option you could run would be Sally's Insatiable Quest. So upon using skill 2, applies 10% increased all attack to the ally with the highest attack for 2 turns. So now instead of giving speed, you're going to at least be giving attack as well as damage reduction. So I think this is another good potential option you could put on Rill just to help your team out overall. And last but not least, another option you could run, the Briar's Maiden's Melancholy. This is from the seasonal Charlotte. Upon taking damage from an attacker enemy mage, there is a 25 to 100% chance to grant a 15 to 35% reduced damage taken buff for 1 turn. So once again, a possibility to give him more survivability. There are other options you could run. Generally, any supporter type skill page would work, or anything that's going to give him extra HP or extra defense. That's typically what you're going to want to run on him. These are just 3 examples to help get you guys started. And now moving on to gear, let's talk about how you can build this character. So the sets I have on this character are not the be all end all. You can actually end up switching out the sets. The one I would say that is at least needed is probably the HP set. This HP set is actually really good on the new Noelle, who I'll talk about in a separate guide video. But for the most part, you do want the defense set and you're going to want the mobility set to give him as much speed and survivability as possible. Other than that, you can switch out for a lot of the other sets here. The one that gives 90% damage reduction when you're over a certain amount of health is really good. And if you're running him with Witch Queen, he will typically have pretty good health. So that's one you can run. I personally just like the HP one because it's easier for me to max transcend the HP one than it is for any of the newer sets. The newer sets are going to be a lot harder to max transcend just because they're limited with how much you get on global, right, for these sets. So that's kind of my opinion of it. But overall, yeah, you're going to want to run defense, HP, and mobility. As for the main stat you're going to be going for defense on these 4, and then magic attack on these 3. He's never going to do the most damage, so I wouldn't worry too much about your magic attack, but you want to increase your defense as much as possible. Then in terms of substats, I would probably go for crit resist. I would also go for defense and damage resist, just in general. So those are the ones you're going to want to go for. Defense percentage, crit resist, and you're also going to want to go for damage resist. And where are the substats? If you're newer to the game, here's where they are. You can re-roll them. So I have some crit resist right here, but then I have a magic attack and an attack one. I don't really need those. The HP one's all right, but I wouldn't say it's like at the top of the list. So I would stick with damage resist, crit resist, and defense percentage. And then if you really need something else, then you can go for HP. But yeah, those are the substats I would run on the gear for him. And then in terms of enhancement, should you guys be enhancing him or not? So getting him to 2 dupes will make it so that at the start of a turn, he grants himself an SP +1 buff. This is good because it will allow him to ult more, and remember his ult is really good for giving 100% mobility, basically giving a mage 2 turns, which is insanely good. So this could be useful. Now, getting him to 5 copies, I don't think is as necessary because upon taking damage from an attacker, grants self a 20% increased mobility buff, which is good. But keep in mind, he is already one of the fastest characters in the game with his LR enhanced passive giving him +5 speed, plus he starts at 120 speed, plus he gets speed from gear and speed from the support tree of the talent tree. So I feel like this just isn't really necessary. It's nice, but something you don't need. So overall, I would say getting him to 2 dupes is worth it, but also not necessary. That's just an SP +1 buff. Getting him to 5 dupes, definitely not necessary, but could be worth it. So in my general opinion, I would say just getting a copy of this guy is good. So he's overall a very low investment LR character that you can get who works out really well. So if you are a free-to-play player, this could be a really good supporter for you, just to put that into perspective. Now, in terms of talents, what would I do for his talent tree? This is kind of what I'm running right now. I do need to unlock the rest of the talent slots, but I have not gotten there yet. I have the damage dealt and the crit damage talent slots. These ones don't really matter because he's never going to do the most damage. So once again, I wouldn't worry about the attack talent tree too much. The defense one does matter. I would give him plus 20% defense, and I give him the stacking defense and crit resist here because that is going to once again give him more survivability like I've been talking about this whole time. And then I would also either give him, I would definitely give him the damage resist, but then I would either give him the swiftness or the mage's blessing, just depending on what you're going for. If you have like a maxed out skill page on him and you have him maxed out to give SPs back, then you might want to go for this to give him an additional SP because that could be useful to you. But in general, I think for the average player, Mage's Blessing is going to be better because you have a higher chance to be able to use your skill 2 sooner, and that is what gives you the damage reduction for the team, and that's going to help Rill be more useful to the team. So I would probably go for the Mage's Blessing and the damage resist overall. Then in the stone slot right here, I would go for a speed one. And the stone slot here, I'd probably go defense. And then this one, just once again, doesn't matter. You could go magic attack, you go crit damage. Doesn't really matter for the attack tree overall. And that is pretty much it for his build guide, other than we need to talk about the teams he can fit on. So for this character right now, I would say there aren't a ton of good mono red teams that you can run him on. That are going to be meta, at least. I feel like when Gray comes out, he'll be better with her. I feel like when I know she's not red, but when the new Valkyrie Noelle comes out, he'll be good with her as well. But for right now on global, I think this in general is probably one of the better teams you could run. And like I said, you might want to run him with Black Asta like on his side. That way you can end up using the combo attack if you need, or speeding up Black Asta and stuff like that. But he is really good on this particular team. He's good for speeding up Yuno, so Yuno can do more silences and stuff like that. And then you got Witch Queen healing and keeping him healthy. So it's a pretty solid team overall for defense, for the ability to silence, to do everything that this team does. Now you could switch out some of the characters just depending on kind of what you're trying to do. He would be okay on potentially, if you're trying to give him mobility, I guess you could go for some sort of weird team like this. You could go for Fuegoleon, let's see, Marileona, you're running Rill here, and then who else do we want? I think maybe Vanessa. Yeah, this team could be good. It's not like it's not a mono team, but this could be an interesting team because you have her Blessing and Protection that gives damage reduction and everything, and healing. You have Rill giving damage reduction. You also have Rill having the ability to speed people up, so you could speed up either Fuegoleon or Marileona depending on the situation, and then you're just going to be able to nuke with Fuegoleon after Marileona stacks so many dots, right? So this could be a potentially okay team, but in general, I do think the mono red team is going to be best for him, but there are a couple of different weird, funny combinations you can try out with this character, and I feel like the fact that he just gives mobility to people, like such insane mobility, he could be useful anywhere. Kind of like Finroll is useful on any other random team. Rill is kind of similar. He's just like the better version of Finroll now, almost, in my opinion. But that is it for his build guide, guys. Let me know what you think down in the comments, and if you guys did enjoy the video, please consider going down there, hitting that like button, and hitting that subscribe button. Peace.